Hi, here we are again. My name is Tom Pritchard, and this is from the series, the continuing series, Secrets of a Meta-Hermeneutical Master. And the last several videos were on ESS, Extrasensory Security, and the last two of those were on ESS and Radical Non-Duality. And we're going on with the Radical Non-Duality now, and we're it's titled the Radical Non-Duality and the New Spirituality. And we've talked about the New Spirituality before, but first I would like to get to some questions. I had a question from the Mystical Theologist, and the Mystical Theologist question, I wrote it down so I could read it. I've had a lot of interesting questions. And I thank you all for asking questions, because it shows me the depth of your questions. Show me that you're sincerely interested in listening to what I have to say, at least, and maybe even gaining some insights, learning something. And all of my teaching is really based on experiential things, and we're talking a lot here, but this is the nature of what we're doing. And again, I'm very grateful for just the privilege of being able to be here with you through the internet, you know, which is an example of the shift in consciousness that's going on. But first, the question from the Mystical Theologist. He had asked earlier about the ego, and I talked about the ego, and from the Mystical Theologist. But could we observe the ego without reacting or feeding it, comprehend it, understand its origin, and renounce it? What if we repented and asked for forgiveness and annihilation? Then it is no longer a part of us. Would that be better? Well, we've talked about that, and let's just go through your question. Could we observe the ego without reacting or feeding it? You know, a lot of your question is just exactly what I'm teaching here about. I talked about the witness last time, and that has to do with practicing the presence and the quantum physics observer effect. And we learn how, through the practice that I'm teaching here, and a lot of other spiritual practices, how to deepen our level of consciousness so we experience these things at a deeper level of consciousness. Could we observe the ego without reacting or feeding it? That's exactly what we do. If we're reacting to it, we're up in the big bubble with it. And for people who are just watching, you're going to have to look at some of the earlier videos to find out about my bubble diagram. And this teaching is sequential. And so anyway, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Mystical Theologist. Maybe go back and look over some of the earlier videos. And when you experience at a deeper level of consciousness, that's not feeding it. Remember I said what you defend against, you make real? And that's feeding it. When you defend against something, you feed it. Or if you want to annihilate it, you're feeding it. You're really making it more real. And the ego doesn't really even exist. And it tries to do everything it can for us to give it its energy, so it seems as if it's more real. And today we're going to get into what we started about the difference. We talked about language, reality, and truth, and doing the deeper work. That's sort of the subtitle of today's thing, and we're just going to go into it from this. Without reacting or feeding it, he says, comprehend it. Yeah, that's experience it with awareness and clarity, because when you're feeding it, or it's got you in a big bubble, then you're feeding it and you're not comprehending it. Understand its origin. Its origin is Exactly. At the deeper levels where the bubble's smaller, it's your teacher. Up in the big bubble, it's your executioner. And we talked about the tears in the fabric of your being and how the mind makes up things to fill those tears, and that becomes our reality. And it's a made-up reality, and that's what the ego is. It's a made-up reality. It's a symbol. We're going to get into the difference between symbol and metaphor. Very, very important. And truth and reality and language. Boy, I just want to say so much all at once, and I want to jump around here and there. And I'm going to do that. So you tie it together inside of yourself. And this is a test now question. Where am I appearing? Yes, in your consciousness. You have to have a little bit of humor with this deep stuff, or else you begin to take your made-up reality too seriously. And the reality is that who you think you are, the ego, is not real. So don't annihilate it. Don't defend against it. Somehow learn how to love it, and we'll get into that. That gets into the forgiveness part. And renounced it. Well, you don't have to renounce what's not real. And if you did renounce it, you would be feeding it. What if we repented and asked for forgiveness? Well, repentance, that's the whole thing. I don't know what you mean by repentance, so I'm going to have to skip over that. And forgiveness that I've talked about on earlier videos too is forgiveness at the deeper levels is really realizing that there's nothing there to forgive and to love it. Remember I talked about seeing through the appearance to the presence that's there? That's forgiveness. To realize there's nothing real that's there to forgive. Now, if you're up in the big bubble, you've got something to forgive, you know, and you forgive what somebody did to you. And but real forgiveness is experience that same impulse that perhaps got you up here. You experience it at a deeper level where the bubble is smaller, where you have more awareness and clarity. Boy, I'm talking fast. I got a lot to say. And you experience at a deeper level, and you realize that there's nothing real there to forgive. And if you think there's something to forgive, the work needs to be done right here. Now that's saying a lot about forgiveness in a little bit of time. And annihilation. Well, if you want to annihilate something, how can you annihilate what's not real? So you're making it more real. Don't annihilate what's not real, because that's pretty funny when you think about it. I don't know. Take it for what it is. This is my way, my truth that I'm trying to communicate with you. And it's no longer part of us. Well, the ego is who we think we are, but it's not real. So it's not a part of us, but it's separate from our truth, from our true nature, from our divine presence, and it's a made-up reality that wants to be fed. And, you know, I can just, would that be better? Well, you know, we've talked about all that. And so it's a very good question, mystical theologist.